You know those moments when a challenge just feels completely insurmountable, like a giant, unmovable mountain just standing there right in your way? I think we've all been there. Today we're diving into, well, a teaching from Jesus that isn't just about comfort. It's actually like a radical blueprint for shattering those giants. Even if you feel like you're starting with almost nothing. Last time we spent some time in Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6, really digging into that wisdom about trusting the Lord with all your heart. So today we're kind of taking that idea, trust and faith, and pushing it even further to an even more maybe astonishing level. We're focusing on one of the most powerful and honestly often misunderstood metaphors in the Bible, the mustard seed. Our mission today is to really unpack Matthew 17:20. Seriously, if you ever felt like my faith is too small or, my prayers just aren't strong enough to make a difference, then this deep dive, it's for you. We're going to try and figure out how even the tiniest spark of real faith can, well, Jesus says it can move immense obstacles.
Yeah, and what's so incredible, I think, is the sheer simplicity of it. But the implications, they just ripple out into every part of our lives. It's not about, whipping up some huge emotional state or reaching some kind of special spiritual level. No, it's about something much, much more accessible and frankly, way more powerful than how we usually think about faith. Okay, so to really feel the weight of this, we need the backstory, the context. This wasn't just some off-the-cuff remark Jesus made. This verse, it comes right after a moment of, well, real frustration and pretty public failure for his disciples. They just tried to drive a demon out of a boy, and they failed, couldn't do it. Can you imagine how baffled they must have been? So they go to Jesus privately and ask him point blank, why couldn't we do it? They're probably expecting some kind of secret technique or something they missed.
Right. And that's what's so striking, isn't it? Jesus' answer. It wasn't about technique. It wasn't a forgotten ritual, not some formula they messed up. His answer just cuts right through all that, straight to the absolute core issue. Their faith, just faith itself. He wasn't giving them more steps. He was pointing to the foundation. He said, and I'll read it again from Matthew 17:20, truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Wow. I mean, that's such a powerful statement. And you find this promise echoed really beautifully across, many good translations. Okay, so let's zoom in on that image, the main one, the mustard seed. When Jesus says faith as small as a mustard seed, he's really not exaggerating how tiny it is. We're talking one of the smallest seeds they would have known back then, often like less than a millimeter across. Just try and picture that, something so minuscule you could barely see it. It seems totally insignificant, right? It's easy to look at something that tiny and think, how could that possibly be the key to moving anything, let alone a whole mountain?
Exactly. And what's truly revolutionary here, the game changer, is that Jesus isn't actually focusing on the quantity of our faith, not the size. He's not saying you need a mountain-sized faith to move a mountain. No. Instead, he's doing something brilliant. He's redirecting our focus entirely onto the object of that faith. Who or what are you trusting? The seed's smallness, that's there to highlight the immense, almost overwhelming power it connects to. So the radical idea isn't just, oh, small faith works. It's that this whole concept shifts the burden from us, from our ability to drum up belief, to God's incredible, unconditional willingness to act, even through just a whisper of trust. So it's less about the muscle of our belief, and much more about being plugged into infinite power.
That's a really crucial distinction.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, we so often feel like our faith isn't enough. We feel inadequate. But if it's not about the size of our faith, then this next part, the moving mountains bit, that's where it gets really practical for us, isn't it? I mean, that imagery is so vivid, moving mountains. Today that might sound, well, kind of fantastical, almost like a fairy tale. Are we supposed to be literally talking to like rock formations? What does moving mountains actually mean for us, in our everyday lives?
That's a great question. And the cultural context here is, well, it's essential. In Jewish tradition, moving mountains was actually a common phrase, an idiom. Everyone understood what it meant. It wasn't about, literally shifting geography with magic words. Thankfully, Jesus isn't telling us to grab our shovels or put on hiking boots. No, it was this powerful, really evocative way to talk about overcoming huge obstacles, things that seemed totally impossible. Think about the kind of challenges that feel like that in your life, like an unmovable mountain range, right? Could be a financial crisis, maybe a chronic illness, a relationship that seems broken beyond fixing, or even a habit you just can't shake. Jesus is saying that even the smallest bit of real faith placed in the right place in God, it can achieve what looks completely impossible to us. It's about conquering the insurmountable things.
Okay, so that leads straight into this incredibly bold promise. Nothing will be impossible for you. Okay. Now, I can imagine some listeners hearing that and thinking, wait a minute, does that mean God is just like
a cosmic vending machine. You put in a tiny coin of faith and boom, out pops whatever you want.
Yeah, that's a common thought.
How do we square that huge promise with the reality that sometimes our most heartfelt prayers, they don't seem to get answered the way we hoped or expected?
Right, and that raises a really important point. It's a very common misunderstanding, actually. The source material helps us see this isn't some kind of divine blank check for anything we fancy. Nothing will be impossible suggests something deeper. An alignment. It's not about ordering God around to do our will. It's more about aligning our will, even with that tiny mustard seed of faith, with His will, and then experiencing His incredible power working through that situation. So the obstacles that become movable, they're the ones blocking God's purposes for us. Or maybe they're things He empowers us to overcome in His strength. And it points towards like a partnership faith.
Yeah.
Our trust unlocks God's power, yeah, but to fulfill His perfect plan, not just grant our immediate wishes.
Absolutely. That makes sense. So when our faith, even if it feels small, genuinely lines up with God's will, when we're actually seeking His purposes, His way for our lives, then there really isn't any obstacle, any challenge that God can't either remove completely or just as powerfully give us the strength to overcome, to climb over maybe.
Exactly.
It's about understanding that His will is always ultimately for our good and His glory. Even if that means walking through the difficulty, not just having it instantly disappear. To help illustrate this idea, how something so small can lead to something huge, maybe think about a simple natural analogy. Jesus used them all the time. Right? Imagine planting a garden. You take the tiniest seed, maybe it is literally a mustard seed, and you bury it. It's small, it's hidden underground, totally unseen.
Yeah.
But from that little speck, something amazing happens. A plant grows.
Right.
Maybe even a whole tree eventually, offering shade, fruit, shelter. It starts tiny, buried, invisible.
Yeah.
But the potential inside, it's enormous. I actually remember hearing this story once about a woman who prayed for her son, who was estranged from her. She prayed every single day for 15 years.
Wow, 15 years. That's dedication.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? That consistent, steady effort year after year. And she admitted lots of times she felt her prayers were just bouncing off the ceiling.
Yeah.
Useless. Like her faith was just too weak, too small for such a big, painful situation. Then one day, she said, completely out of the blue, her son called her.
No way.
Yeah. He apologized for everything.
Yeah.
All the years of silence, the hurt. And he came home. He even started going to church with her again. It was just such a powerful picture, her mustard seed faith, even when it felt tiny and useless to her. It had been growing roots underground the whole time, silently, powerfully, working towards that incredible, seemingly impossible reconciliation.
That's a beautiful story. And it perfectly illustrates how faith often works, doesn't it? It's not always about the instant, flashy result that we can see and measure right away. Often it's that small, steady trust in God, day in, day out, through seasons where you doubt, where you're just waiting. That's what cultivates something much, much bigger and more impactful than we can even imagine in the moment. That persistent, unseen work underground, that's what grows the tree from the tiny seed. It really shows that God honors the act of faith itself, right? Regardless of how big or small we think it is.
So, okay, bringing this back to us, listening right now, what does this all mean for you? How do we take these really powerful insights about mustard seed faith and actually apply them, live them out today? Because we're all facing something, aren't we? Some challenge, some dream, some struggle that just feels way too big for us on our own.
Well, I think the first thing, maybe the most important, is don't despise small beginnings. Don't look down on your own small faith. It is so easy to feel like, oh, my prayer wasn't eloquent enough, or my faith just isn't strong enough, or this little act of trust won't count. But remember what Jesus said. Remember what we've been discussing. God honors faith itself, not the volume of your prayer, not your perceived level of spiritual perfection. Even a weak prayer may be whispered in sincerity. It's powerful. Why? Because of who you're talking to, the all-powerful God. There's huge freedom in that psychologically. You don't have to manufacture some massive feeling. You just need a small, genuine connection. Tiny seed. And secondly, speak to your mountains. Seriously, take a moment, maybe even later today, and really identify that obstacle, that metaphorical mountain in your life right now. Is it fear, something that just paralyzes you? Is it an addiction that feels like it has an unbreakable grip, a broken relationship that seems just beyond repair? Maybe it's a deep insecurity or hurdle at work. Whatever that mountain is, the encouragement here is to approach it with faith and ask God specifically to move it. Don't just sit there looking at it, feeling hopeless. Actively speak to it in prayer, trusting in God's power. Now, this isn't about being irrational or demanding. It's about putting your trust into active practice. And then finally, the third thing is nurture your seed. Just like a real seed needs water and sunlight, your faith needs care to grow. It's not static. How does it grow? Well, by engaging with God's word, reading scripture, hearing it taught, letting it really soak into your mind and spirit. It grows through consistent prayer, even if those prayers start small, maybe hesitant. And it grows by taking small steps of obedience, doing the next right thing you believe God is guiding you towards. Each small action builds on the last one. It strengthens the roots of your faith, unseen, underground.
That's such practical wisdom.
Yeah.
It really makes it feel doable, tangible. So to kind of bring it all home, I want to ask you directly, if you're listening, where in your life right now, today, do you need to plant just a tiny mustard seed of faith? What's the mountain you're facing that needs to be spoken to in faith? And what's maybe one small intentional step you could take, maybe even today, to start nurturing that tiny seed?
Yeah, and to sort of tie it all together, what we learned from this whole deep dive is just incredibly freeing, I think, and profoundly empowering. Our feeling that we don't have enough faith, that perceived lack, it's not actually a barrier to God's power. Isn't that amazing? Instead, it's almost like an invitation for him to show up and demonstrate his power through our simple, even tiny trust. God isn't demanding we somehow conjure up this massive, perfect, unwavering faith. No, he simply invites us to bring what we have, even if it's just the smallest seed of belief. Because that tiny trust is powerful, not because of its size, but because of the infinite, unshakable power of the one we place it in. It really reminds us, doesn't it? Our smallness just serves to highlight his greatness.
That's powerful. So as you go about your day, maybe just consider that. What would it look like to plant that tiny seed of faith in that specific area of your life you thought of, and then maybe find the courage to trust God completely with the results, even if they seem impossible right now? What if the very thing you see as the smallness of your faith, what if that's actually its greatest strength? Because it forces us to rely completely on an infinitely powerful God, not on ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us on this, incredible deep dive into the power of mustard seed faith. If today's conversation resonated with you, maybe sparked something, and you know someone who might be feeling like their faith just isn't enough, please share this deep dive with them. It might be exactly the encouragement they need to hear today. Next time, we're going to continue this journey. Looking into the heart of God's promises, we'll be exploring Isaiah 26.3. It's God's promise of perfect peace for those whose minds are steadfast, those who trust in him. It connects so deeply with what we've talked about today, actually. You won't want to miss it. Until then, keep planting those mustard seeds.